Alright, hi students. This video is going to cover the collections framework now, so I'm going to go ahead and put another button on my screen just to have it do a little something different. There we go. Going to go ahead and make a event handler for it. I'm going to collapse this so I don't have to look at it. Okay, so everything in this button click event is going to cover the collections framework. Alright, so what is a collection? Well, a collection is essentially the same thing as a primitive array, but kind of like with all of the primitive types, like decimal, int, remember they have a big D decimal and a big D integer, so they're kind of like wrapper classes for those types, except the collections framework offers a lot more functionality to filter and do a lot of things that you can't do with primitive types. So it does offer a lot more functionality at the cost of a little less, I guess, a little not as fast, a little less performance. But if you're not looping over many things, it's not a huge performance hit. So in one of the previous videos, I did do a list, I think, of text box. I also did a list of int. I want to do a list of string here. And again, I don't need to specify that it's a list of string. I can just say var last names equals new list of string, and it'll just know that I'm talking about a list of string here because I say new list of string here. I'm going to use the lowercase string. And then with anything else, I can offer these brackets over here and start typing out what I want this string list to have in it. So I could say my last name, Robinson, and whatever else. If I needed to add any names later on, I could say lastnames.add. So remember, primitive arrays, you had to know how many things were in that array when you instantiate it. Here you can add things ad hoc. So I could say I'll add another last name here after the fact. Last names dot add Roberts. I can even make another array equals new list of string. And I could say Davidson, Miller, and I could say last names dot add range, and I can add an entire list of names to my other list. So you can add one, you can add many. So let's look and do a dot operator after last names and see all of the things you can do. So here's all of the things you can do. You see these little boxes, which are methods that you can call. You can for each through all the names. So if I wanted to write them out to the console, I could do last names.for each. So this is part of like a link expression. We'll cover link more around the end of the semester. But a lot of the added ability of the collections framework is on link. So just being able to do all of these link operations and delegate types and all of the cool things you can do with link is really cool, honestly, and it's a lot of the reason why people use C# over Java, that do use C# over Java. Java's got better over the years, but C# definitely led the way in functional programming and being able to do a lot of cool things like this. So I could do a last names.for each, And then I believe the syntax is like this to do an anonymous method inside of it. Okay, sorry, I just had a brain fart there for a second. So in order to do an anonymous method inside here, you need what you're going to be calling each name that you're going through, and then the brackets. So for each name, I want to go ahead and console.writeLine it. I want to console.writeLine X, which is just the person's name. So now I should have Deacock, Robinson, Mason, Roberts, Davidson, Miller. They should all write to the console when I click the button. Button 2, and then you see all the last names written here. So that's one of the cool things you can do with the collections framework. You can also, if I do some more last names dot, you can get just the first name if maybe you want only one of them. You can do a dot take, which will just take, say, like 4 or 5 of them, just you want only 3 of them, dot take 3. And then from that, I should have Deacock, Robinson, Mason. Let's take 4. And then I want the last names where, so I want to do another link expression here. And these are called lambda expressions, where I can say, I want to call each name that I iterate through X. And I want where X dot starts with Rob. So I should have 2 names that start with Rob. So now I want to console.writeLine last names dot count. So it should write 2. So let's go ahead and run that, F5. Click the button. I'll need to go to the output window since I don't have it up. And it's 6. Why would it be 6? Oh, I didn't actually do anything with this. I probably need to put that in a variable. Or call toList on it. Let's do that. The names, and then let's do names.count. I don't think I actually did anything with it. No. What doesn't it like about that? Yeah, I think this is going to need a .toList. I need to cast it to a list. Okay, that's better. Yep, and now it's 2. So I did last names.where, but I didn't actually put it into a variable for it to do the filtering. So if we go back to last names and do a dot operator, there's also a few cool methods you can do. You can remove items from a list. You can copy entire collections. I don't see anything else that. There's your remove all, remove at, so you can remove at a particular index. So if you do a parenthesis, you can see that you can remove at a particular index. So it takes an integer. You can remove a range of items. So again, if you're confused as to what these take, you can always open the parenthesis and it takes an index, so probably where you want to start removing items, and then how many items after that. And remember, these are 0 based, starting at 0. So your collection always starts at 0. There's a few more collections. If you go through the chapter 8 PowerPoint, there's like a sorted list if you want to read through that. We're not going to cover that too much in this class though. There's a key value pair. You can see this is a key value pair. So it could be whatever you want. My key is going to be a string as long as it's unique, as long as whatever you're giving it is unique. I'm going to go and use the var keyword. Equals new key value pair. So all this is I want to be able to maybe get to each text box or something based on the string, based on maybe what I call the text box. So this is kind of like a dictionary. Here's my key and here's my value. If you look at a dictionary, key value pair dictionary equals new dictionary. And again, it's not much different. It's essentially the same thing. So here's this, a dictionary, a string text box, and this is just a key value pair of string text box. There isn't a ton of functionality one versus the other. So if you ever wanted like a dictionary, username and password, stuff like that, you could put in a dictionary. Really any problem in programming can be solved with a dictionary of some sort. And the last two collections I'd like to talk about are stacks. So I'm going to go ahead and use the var keyword equals new stack. And again, a stack can be generic, so it could be a stack of anything, like a stack of integer. Or I could have var q equals new q. My q is going to be of maybe string. So remember we talked about stacks previously when we talked about a stack trace, which showed you what methods were being called and when they were being called. So whenever you use a stack, you can, if you put the dot operator on the end of it, you can see so with the stack you can push items on the stack. So if you're thinking about like you're at a buffet line or something, you can push things onto the stack and they'll go further and further to the bottom. You can pop things off the stack. You can peek. So it returns the object at the top of the stack without removing it. So you can see maybe if you've reached the bottom yet. If you peek and something's there, you haven't reached the bottom yet. So stacks can be used to solve a lot of problems, like especially recursively. You can use recursion or you can use stacks. Stacks you can go through the file system. A lot of people use stacks to solve the problem of like reversing a string in interviews. One of the common interview questions is, how can I reverse a string? Well, you can use a stack and say you have a string var name equals Dylan or whatever. And then you know this is a character array, so you can push every character on top of the stack one at a time. So you could say for each item in my collection, for each letter and name, I'm going to say stack dot push the letter, and then I'm going to say console dot write line What do I want to do? Let's do stack dot. No, that doesn't like that. So I have them all on top of my stack. Let's try another for each loop. So for each item in my stack, let's console.writeLine each item. Let's see if that works the way I think it does. This is actually an interesting problem to solve here. So let's go ahead and run the program. Click the button. Looks like they for eached over them as integers. Oh, was my stack of integers? Whoops. Name. For each letter in name, stack.push the letter. Yeah, I should have probably made those of characters. Whoops. So let's go to my stack and not do it of integer. Let's do it of char. That might make more sense. Okay, so you can see that now it's backwards. It was Dylan, and now it's N-O-L-L-Y-D. So I used my stack, I pushed them all on the stack, so then the last one on the stack is going to be the first one off. And a queue is the exact opposite, so you can also do the same thing with a queue. I guess I need to stop running, full screen it. Here's my queue. I'm going to do a dot operator to see everything I can do with the queue. And you can see when you get down here, it's kind of the same thing with the stack. There's another peek operator, so you can see if there's anything in the queue without taking it off. You can end queue, so you can add things to the queue, add an objects to the end. You can dequeue, so you can take the first thing off of your queue. So that's the collections framework. Again, the namespace is collections.generic. You can see all of the cool stuff you can do with it, the key value pairs, the dictionaries, stacks, queues, how you can use the for each to go through them, how you can use link operations to filter based on maybe what you're trying to find. Again, doing link operations to go through each one of them. Being able to add on the fly, being able to add multiples on the fly. They're very, very powerful. And this just obviously scratches the surface on all the things you can do with even link. You can see if there's anything in your list at all. So you can do lastnames.any, and that returns a boolean. So maybe if you're trying to do something, if where's my end button? Oops. So if there are any last names, then I could choose to do something. So this returns a bool, you can see. Determines whether a sequence contains any elements. So it's really powerful stuff, the link framework. Going over it would take a class all in itself, so definitely look into it if you're interested in being able to filter things and do a lot of cool operations on lists and collections. This is probably one of the more important things you'll learn in this class, just because what a computer does well is goes through tons and tons of data and information efficiently. It can do operations, the same operation a million times very fast. So being able to do this and have the computer do a lot of the hard work for you, having the collections framework do a lot of the work for you to solve problems is really is really the crux, if you will, of this class, and it's very important, and also very important to be able to reiterate this and regurgitate this whenever you go to interviews or your internships. This is really what separates people that know what they're doing and that don't know what they're doing. If they're trying to for each through things, or if they're trying to use primitive for loops, or they're not trying to filter things with LINQ like this. So it really separates the people that know what they're doing with the people that might not be as familiar with the language. So be sure to practice all this on your own and use it in the assignments whenever you're going through collections or multiple items, and it'll make your lives a lot easier. So the next chapter is chapter 9. It's going to cover dates and strings. I'm going to try to put some good videos to watch out there, maybe of Linda might have some good videos. Also read the chapter, go through the PowerPoint, and practice on your own. Alright, see you in the next video. Thanks.